Welcome to the Learning Infinite interview series. Today we have with us Mr. Shailesh Haribhakti. Mr. Haribhakti needs no introduction. He's a very well-known name in the corporate world. He's currently a chairman with BDO Haribhakti, Indian member fund firm with BDO, which is a network of international public accounting firms. He's also associated with various professional and regulatory organizations like ICAI, SEBI, and Indian Merchant Chambers, and many more, of course. We are happy to have you here, sir. Let me begin with my questions. Would you tell us something about your journey as a professional over these years?
Well, I started my professional life at the age of 14 when in my vacation between giving my ISC exam and waiting for the college admission, I had 6 months of time. So I started doing auditing. That is the year 1971 when Haribhakti and Company was asked to audit 125 branches of the Central Bank of India. And so I started my career at the age of 14 as a junior most member of an audit party which went to very remote places. At that time they were remote, Jamnagar, Rajkot, and parts of Saurashtra and parts of Maharashtra and Nanded and other places, which today are big cities, but in 1971 they were rather very limited cities, if you can call them that. And we were auditing, staying in extremely modest accommodations and doing some very hard work, because at that time all auditing was manual and everything had to be done in a tick and bash way, and we needed to check things. And so that's where my professional career started. And I did 2 years at Sydenham College, and then it so happened that my father became the president of the Indian Merchants Chamber, and so I started out my life as a chartered accountant, as CEO of my company.
Very interesting.
Which, because it was a smallish firm, and there were just 2 or 3 partners, and therefore, as my father had to take that whole year off to perform his public duty at the Indian Merchants Chamber, the firm was left in my charge, and that's where I learned everything: administering, client interface, obtaining a client, servicing a client, looking at administration, motivating people, giving them leadership, all of that. Very initial phase. And then I took a short stint at Arthur Young and Company in Chicago for 14 months. And I came back and have always been with Haribhakti Group since then.
So as you said, you have learned a lot while being on the job. But as I know, you're also a chartered accountant as a professional.
Absolutely.
So did that also contribute to
of
your
course.
growth?
I mean, all education contributes. But the biggest teacher in life is doing work, is interacting with clients, is interacting with situations, interacting with the government of India, with the bureaucracy, with tough people, easy people to deal with. I've dealt with chairman of bank, I've dealt with leaders of world bodies, I've dealt with almost everybody that one can categorize. And so that's where the real learning happens. That's where you start connecting the dots, that's where you actually begin to see things in perspective. That's when you start creating the patterns which guide you as to what you need to do in a particular situation. Every situation is different, it's unique. And what is important, I now discover, is your attitude, your approach, and your skill in keeping your own equanimity in very tough situations, and your intellectual integrity. So it's not as if everything is right or wrong from the beginning. There are various shades that you pass through. and then you are able to transform the situation and create a solution, which is unique. And that's what appeals to people.
Great. So you already mentioned challenges that you faced, but were there any more bigger challenges that came into your life apart from the fact that you had to work at 14 and handle your firm as a CEO some time later? Interesting challenges.
Everything in life is a challenge. We have done some spectacularly difficult engagements, like investigating post the Harshad Mehta scam. We did a whole lot of investigations. Those were very tough, intensive, very, very difficult, mind-wrenching exercises of what happened, why did it happen, who did it, why did they do it, what were the motivations, what are the trails they left, what is it that we could do to piece it back together, what would be the solution, how do you come out and make sense out of it. Or when there was a huge issue in that Reserve Bank discovered in all the foreign banks in terms of the way that the transactions with non-resident Indians were being routed. And we were asked to do some of the largest investigations. And those were hugely challenging assignments, from which we abstracted what we now call the whole range of products. So we abstracted products such as full outsourcing. Today, outsourcing shared services is something that one talks about on an everyday basis. But at that time, it was absolutely brand new.
Absolutely, correct.
And we sort of put the first service to be able to file your tax returns online together. We put together the first service to make sure that you get regulatory compliant in all aspects. Because we had seen what happens when you're not compliant with the regulation and what a huge price corporations had to pay. And we discovered that there's a big comfort in being compliant. So I actually established a company called Advantage Comfort. So I established another company which was called Advantage Moti, which was move operations to India.
Wow.
And so forth. So we did Munshi Kaka, which was your cyber munim who would do your accounting and actually file your returns. So, and all of these have now transformed into new avatars, which we find commonplace today.
Very much.
But we had done all of these innovations some 15, 20 years ago to put these thoughts into practice, which was the biggest challenge, to discover disruptive, innovative, next generation ideas and actually put them together. So that's what we are continually doing. And therefore what has evolved around us is not one organization, but a whole ecosystem where we have facilities which can go into a business, evaluate its model, find out if it's broken, in what way is it broken, and how can we put it back together. And solutions could lie in leadership, in motivation, in people, in process, in finance, in marketing, in strategy. It could lie in almost every area. And each business model which is broken has a different problem. Today, most business models are broken because labor is not available. The right kind of labor is not available. And the right cost of funds is just not there. Everybody is paying interest which is unaffordable. Now, that has broken the backs of many, many companies. Every time you started taking a risk, every time you wanted to take a big bet, you needed to go out in the market. You needed to borrow money. You needed to raise equity.
Absolutely.
Either you got diluted so much that you were not relevant, or you got stuck into a loan which is very expensive. Both of which kill a business model.
True.
So now, today, we are seeing that there is a whole need for rejuvenate and reset these business models. So that's a large part of the work that we do.
So that's very interesting, the way you have laid out the things that you have done, and I personally feel that the things that you've done are actually were much ahead of their time when you started them. So what was that company which you started for filing online tax returns?
It was called Munchikaka.
It was Munchikaka. Okay, great.
Munchikaka.com.
So it still exists today?
No. What happened is that the government of India thought that this was such a good idea that they needed to adopt it themselves. So now the government of India has a free site.
So some kind of nationalization,
No, if you like, it was an evolutionary process in which we participated. And we are very happy with the outcome.
Okay.
Because today, thousands of returns are filed online.
Maybe
free.
Tax, yeah.
Absolutely free. Because the government of India set up Munchikaka, really. And if you see the Munchikaka site and you see today's government of India site, you'll see where they converged. Because we had virtually the entire set of people who were participating for the government of India in one room. And we presented to them the idea of Munchikaka. And they got it. So we are validated in that sense.
Absolutely.
World over today, I mean, in the US, most returns are filed online. In India, almost everything is filed online. So millions of returns are now filed online.
And increasingly moving there.
And increasingly, everything is moving online.
Yeah.
So we got validated.
Yeah. So in all this, what's the most interesting thing that you remember? Some high point or low point, maybe.
Well, the most interesting thing that I can remember is the day that we presented to the common boards of 3 very large Indian companies on a merger exchange ratio when what were called Ilu-Pilu were merged into Reliance. And so Mr. Dhirubhai Ambani was sitting in the chairman's chair, and the entire boards of all the companies were sitting around one large boardroom table in Reliance, and 2 valuers, Mr. Yazdi Maligam and myself, had to present the valuation thesis to the joint boards. And we did that, and that was really a very, very big, very memorable 15-20 minutes that I spent actually presenting the thesis.
And this was like how many years back?
15 years ago.
Okay.
So, so it's, it remains etched in your memory.
Absolutely, absolutely. Big moment. Yeah. So we also know that mentors and coaches play an important role in our lives of many people. Absolutely. Did you ever happen to have any mentor or coach?
All my life I have had people who automatically and quite without knowing it became my mentors. The first was, of course, my father. I mean, in my very early days, he was the person who I was certain in my mind that any problem that I would pose, he would have an answer. So that was a great comfort. So I never had to go out for any tuition or for any extra help. It was all available in-house and at home. So that was a big relief for me. So he was, I would say he was my first kind of guru, mentor, person who I could always go to. Then I remember was a gentleman called Mr. S.L. Agarwal, who was the chief internal auditor of Hindustan Lever. He taught me everything that I know today about internal auditing and about risk and management of risk and how Levers does it. And he inspired me to do the Certified Internal Auditor course, which I successfully completed at first attempt in Chicago. I was the first actually qualified Certified Internal Auditor of India. So I got the certificate at the hands of the then president of the institute, Mr. H.B. Dondi, who presented the certificate to us. So,
great.
He was my second mentor. Then was Mr. D.L. Shah, the owner of Perfect Machine Tools. He's the person who actually inspired me on areas of quality. So his vision was that Made in India should be the best brand in the world. That was his vision. And he sort of talked me through the entire idea of what makes quality, how is it built, what is the process, how does ISO 9000 work, why is it important. He took me through the whole journey. And that has remained with me for a long time. And then Sir David Tweedy, who was the chairman of the International Accounting Standards Board, he inspired me by his absolutely awesome knowledge of accounting standards and standard setting. Then there were the SEBI chairman that I have interacted with, all of them, who were all very inspirational figures, starting with Mr. S.S. Nadkarni, and then Mr. Dave, and then D.R. Mehta, and Mr. Bajpai, and then Mr. Damodaran, and then Mr. Bhave. So all of them in various ways taught all of us a lot, and in terms of capital markets and regulation and how it works and why it should work and all of that.
And I'm sure the journey,
so many mentors.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure the journey continues. There are many more people who are probably benefiting from you now.
No, I mean, I'm continuously learning even today. So
that's very humble of you.